It's a meeting of the Community Investment Program Task Force. It is 5:30. It's Monday, August 21st, 2023, as authorized by Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code. This meeting may be convened into a closed executive session for the purpose of seeking confidential legal advice from the city manager on any agenda item herein. The city of Rowlett reserves the right to reconvene, recess, or realign the regular session or call executive session or order of business at any time prior to the adjournment. The process for public input. If you are not able to attend in person, you may complete the citizens input form on the city's website by 3:30 p.m. of the meeting. All forms will be stored in the dashboard prior to the start of this meeting. For in-person comments, registration forms and instructions are available inside City Hall. Did we receive any comments or input from the city? No. So, the first item on the agenda is consider approval of the minutes from the August 7th, 2023 meeting. If you all could take a couple of minutes and look over them. If there are no questions, then we're ready. We'll take a motion. Motion by John Coates.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of Sunday.
A second by Richard. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, unanimous pass. I'm going to go a little bit off topic here. I want to thank the city manager for the letter that was provided and staff for continuing to support us so well. It's a great package, and I really appreciate that. Public was giving it time. Item 2, discuss the Parks and Recreation Department's project prioritization.
So if I may introduce Aaron, yes, I just wanted to say that we have come back with some, what may seem to be a repeat of some of the information, but we felt, as you may know, that the information was somewhat lacking and maybe confusing, and we wanted to provide you with some better information that you can make a more decision on. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron, who is going to give us a presentation on the parks list of parks.
Yes, thanks, Jeff. Kind of what Jeff said, we, after the last meeting, we went back and, but it's the paper, principal paper to kind of get a little bit more detail for you guys. The team did a really good job as far as getting what they could and the amount of time that they had. So I'm really proud of that. So we'll go through that slide by slide. We'll talk about the projects. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Good. Great. I had to get it out of its case.
So again, this is our list of projects that we've presented before. You guys have kind of seen it. We've had some minor tweaks to some of the projects that we presented before. But again, we will talk about those in a little bit more detail for slide 1. So you'll see there's the list of the 14 projects that we are proposing, basically from the Parks Facility Building, which is out of Community Park, to Kids Kingdom, to erosion control, all the way down to Lakefront at Congo Phase 2. So without further ado, let's get into each slide. So number 1, Community Park facility improvements, $1 to $2 million. I revisit that because we split it up into two different options. So the $1 million basically gets us the new park maintenance facility with equipment repair, storage, offices, restrooms with showers. As you can imagine, 105-degree days. They finish the day, they probably take a shower, drag the ball fields, they want to rinse off before they get in the truck. offices, restrooms, and then again, a break room. You guys saw what they currently are in right now. We'd love to improve that space for them, which ideally would improve morale and probably productivity. With the $2 million, it will get us what I just spoke about, and then it would get us increased maintenance abilities, proper drainage, conveyance to wastewater, more power. The way that it's laid out now is we're kind of peaked at power, so we have to drag some more power and some more meters over to the area. Storage, and as you can imagine, lighting and security, which is always a concern out there. So, Wet Zone Water Park, 1.5 million. This is one of the projects that we originally had talked about previously. The pictures are they're just images to kind of give you an idea about what we're looking to do. So Turtle Cove, 170,000 to 250,000. Understand that this is an older play area for the younger kids. 22 years old. We want to improve it. We want to come up to the 2023 era and not remain in the 2000s. It's been repainted, it's been repaired, all the fun stuff that goes along with maintenance, but we want to replace it. Now, the reason we included such a broad range was because sometimes with the newer equipment, you have to replace sleeves because some of the new pieces may not fit with the PVCs, the plumbing, the installation that's there now. So that's why we won't know until we get down into it. New shade structures. So has everybody been to Wet Zone? Yes. So the shade structures that we're talking about are the 3 shade structures as soon as you walk in the gate that are straight ahead. There's 3 structures off to the right, and then there's 2 structures in the back. Heat, sun, wear and tear, storms, ripping, wind, all that stuff needs to be replaced. Some of the new shade that we're wanting to put into is individual pieces. So that way families are able to, come in and reserve those individual shade structures. Now, this is a revenue generator for Wet Zone, so it is an important piece of the puzzle, as is a pavilion. So if you've been to Wet Zone, like you said, we have the one pavilion, which is available all year long. So we opened it up from April through September for Wet Zone. So that's where they do birthday parties, baby showers, all that kind of stuff. What we want to do is convert our same volleyball pit, which is on the southwest side of the park. We want to remove the volleyball court. We want to install a pavilion, much like, which is what it's going to right now, and still utilize it all year long. So we would adjust the fence. That way it would open up more rental opportunities for people who want to have birthday parties, want to have baby showers, want to do, private rentals. Then when the Wet Zone closes, we just move the fence, and now it's available for rent. So we have 2 pavilions at the Conroe Park. But on top of that, now with us opening up the new disc golf course, adding more tournaments, locations for people to reserve, be in shade, all that kind of fun stuff. So 4-season usage, again, for all of the bonus.
Excuse me.
Kiss.
Do you want us to hold questions to the end or ask as you go?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick question on the pavilion. So, so you're saying that whatever the fencing is, that it would be like at the end of the season, it would be relocated or moved each season?
Correct. So the way that the current facility is, we have the ability to move the fence. So I'm going to try to explain this the best that I can. So you have the pavilion. So right now you have access to just the pavilion. So the fence runs on the outside of the pavilion to prevent people from getting into Wet Zone. So when we get into season, that fence, we just unscrew some bolts, we lift it up, and we put it on the front. So that way, nobody has access to that area. And that's kind of what we want to do with that pavilion that would sit on the south side of the park.
And then off-season, when it's just for pavilion use, when the wet zone isn't in use, is there still access to restrooms?
So there is a restroom there, yes.
Okay.
On the west side.
Okay.
So there is a, yes.
Okay. Alright, thank you.
You will. Facility updates, renovations, we talked about the pump rooms, the chemical rooms. The last time we met, I kind of explained about the fire marshal's office coming through and basically giving us an inspection of those rooms. Electrical compliance, the main thing is making sure that, we tell people that you have to be in compliance with what city standards are, what state standards are, so we need to be as well. So electrical compliance, which is the pump room, chemical rooms, and the concession room. If you remember, I showed you guys the picture that had the electrical boxes hanging from the ceiling. That would be one that we would relocate. Plumbing and drainage updates, pump room, pool deck, and then concession as well. We would have to install a grease trap, which is required state regulations. HVAC replacement and compliance. Again, the vents, the doors, everything that is in that room really needs to be updated and replaced. And then the pumps, which we looked at, seal kits and labor. I did say last time they're trying to get out to do an assessment. I don't have those numbers currently, but as soon as I get them, I'm more than happy to share them with you. But you're looking at $13,000 each for the pumps. Parking lot improvements, $3 million. Parking additions and improvements to accommodate growth. As you guys know, we're growing in all aspects. Population, we're growing in program participation, we're growing in programs, we're growing all across the board. So the first parking lot improvement will be Springfield Park. We talked about Dexton Road. People are parking all along Dexton Road, which is bad. Whether they're accidents, whether it's near hits, misses, whatever you want to call it, but we're proposing 1,700 square yards, which is approximately 50 parking spaces, which would be off of Dexter Road to get people away from all of those hazards. The second option is the south lot, which is just past the playground, which would be on the south side of the park, if you will. Right kind of at the intersection of Antioch and 66. We would like to add roughly 80 parking spots with the growth. If you haven't been in there in the fall or the spring, a lot of people use that trail. More people are going to be pushed to use the baseball field that's there. So we're just trying to pre-plan and get ahead of the game. Secondly, it's Pecan Grove Park, which is the south lot, which is down by the new disc golf course, south of the wet zone. We're looking at wanting to add 50 parking spots there. We do have to take into consideration the easements and the driveways from Mike Floor and all of that. So that would help us open up some areas for additional parking for when wet zone becomes busier than what it is. People are there for tournaments for disc golf, or they're just out there, honestly, take their dog and run. Which, a lot of people.
Have we ever had that parking lot go to overflow other than the 4th of July?
Which one?
Cock Road.
Oh, it goes overflow often.
Normally what they do is they'll come to the side or the front of RCC and then walk down. But I think it would be more convenient for those who are coming up and it's closer, and then park in front of RCC. And then lastly, Kitty Railroad Park. As you guys know, one of the things is we're having to relocate the inline hockey rink. So we're relocating the inline hockey rink to Kitty Railroad Park. If you haven't been to Kitty Railroad Park, that's our hidden gem. That is one of the parks that people don't really know about, but it's a beautiful park. So we're asking to include 50 parking spots because if you have hockey going on, you have people wanting to use the trail, if you have soccer, you have a full parking lot already as it is. So we are definitely going to be able, we're definitely going to need to accommodate those additional parking spots. So those, or that actually was addition that we made most recently. So,
Aaron, so people are still, if that practice soccer,
correct,
so they're still using that as.
correct. Yes.
Aaron, is it correct that these are all additional and not repairing
Thi-
parking that's there?
Correct. These are all additional parking spots to accommodate, you know, the growing numbers for our park users.
Question. So you said the cost estimate based on similar project, it doesn't include any design fees, so is there a separate fund for those design fees, or where's the design, you know, where's the soft cost portion coming from?
It would be in there.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, because I was gonna say that it doesn't add up to that 3 year about,
They're sufficient.
you know, it would be a lot.
So, the City Point Park, we all know that it's been closed for a while. And we have some struggles that are there. The recent fire at Terlago has now kind of prevented us from utilizing the entire trail. One of the things that we've talked about is determining next steps in this process. We do have a cost estimate that was provided to us from
STV.
STV that will look at the forensic information, evaluation, we'll look at the piles, we'll look at everything that's involved with that project. Based on that, we'll have to wait to see what the evaluation comes back as. That says likely causes, potential remedies, and it may require ultimate funding solutions. So,
So is the ask just for the $122,000 of the evaluation report?
Yes.
Okay,
sorry.
sorry.
Kids Kingdom, replace existing pouring place, that was weathered and worn. With that in mind, we just recently had to reseal it. When it was originally installed, it wasn't installed correctly. So we had to go back in and seal it and coat it. What they say is typically in a standard warm place, maintenance, it should be resealed every 3 years. But it's getting to the point where we recently just patched it, so we went in different areas and we cut them out, patched it, but it needs to be redone the right way. What that consists of is 21,000 square feet. It gets removal, disposal of the surface material, as well as the subsurface if there's any that needs to be done, and drainage as well. Included in that is updating existing playground features, $250,000. The issue that we're having right now is that if you've been to Kids Kingdom, some of the features are broken. Some of the little kid things, they are, but they're broken, yeah, they're broken. But the businesses that actually make them are no longer. So I just can't go to this other playground and say, hey, I need a new spider climber. Because they're out of business nature. So the difficulty we're having is finding replacement pieces for that specific area, because there's gonna have to be some sort of demolition, if you will, coming in, cutting up, filling, that sort. So that is one of the challenges that we're having. So if we can figure out how we can replace all of that in one by one local agency or one that is current, will help us save a little bit of money.
So are you talking about like you know, said the little steering wheels and the little gizmos and gadgets. and
Yes.
The textile
Tactile and all
Yes.
things that you're moving around.
Correct.
So do you have to remove parts of the structure to do that, or can you just remove that accessory?
It would just have to be totally removed. But if we remove it, I want to put something back there.
Right.
Because those kids are at least used to going up and doing stuff with
Right.
tic-tac-toe or things like that.
But those things, I can't remember, it's been a long time since my kids were little, but are they bolted to the structure or are they set in?
Like veterans, are they carrying around?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
So it's difficult, right? So you should want to pull up one of those mushrooms.
Right.
So now you've got a hole
Yeah,
just sitting
yeah,
there. So, or
I
the
gotcha.
spider climber, which has been out, you know, it has the decking that it is a safety issue, which is why it's been closed. But the company that we purchased it from is no longer in business. So it's a matter of trying to figure out who around here can help us. I mean, even we've asked, if you can't replace it, can you tell us who can replace it? Then we get the, let you know later. So. Community Center, Gym A, $400,000. We've already been to the community center downstairs. One of the original gyms there. Replacing the hardwood flooring, adding a gym divider, which will help us with classes and spacing and revenue. Definitely will help us with volleyball, which comes into volleyball conversion, which means the way it's currently set up, you can only have one volleyball net set up. But if we can figure out how we can convert it to where there's two, then we basically can leave one gym open for members to come play basketball and still have two volleyball practices going on at the same time. Interior painting, improved bleacher seating. I'd love to get rid of those metal bleachers that are currently there. The single benches can go with something a little more safer. And then obviously including the unknown or cost electrical connections, reconfiguration of lighting. If you ever go there and you look up at the red iron that's there, the lights are running right down the middle. We have to move those in order for the gym to be divided equally if we put a divider. So,
Sorry, another question. On the hardwood flooring, does that have to be replaced? It can't be, we've sanded and refinished.
we have sanded
So we're
and
down to the
finished.
nails and.
They showed us, so when we had the last pipe burst and water got into Gym A, they literally showed us a brand new 2-inch floor compared to what we have, which is about a half an inch. Their nails starting to stick up, so we have to inspect it before everybody goes and plays. I mean, at this point, it's best to just rip it all up,
Yep.
put it in. So. Community Park Athletic Field improvements, we talked about the turf fields on the softball side. It's kind of the breakdown that you can see. Four full turf fields, that's a mouthful. Roughly $3.4 million. If we wanted to do just infield only installation, it's $450,000. However, you still have to do outfield leveling. You still have to do all the testing. You still have to do everything else. Really quick, just a side note. I was at a director school last week in Chicago, so I was at the school with other recreation, arts and recreation professionals. And the guy had just told me that in the fall of last year, they went and they did infield turf only. They didn't do anything with the outfield. Well, that's great. But if you don't have proper drainage, if your outfields aren't level, it doesn't matter if you have turf in the field or not, you're still going to be rained out. So, proposition is to do all four full turf fields. In addition to that, the dugouts and fencing for softball, 8 fields, and then 16 dugouts, spectator areas. Some of the shade that is over the bleachers on some of the baseball and softball side are no longer there because they're old, they've ripped and bled. To try to get all of that replaced is pretty expensive. So instead of just piecemealing everything, we want to do it all in. Yes, sir.
Is it true that this is also a revenue generator? Don't we rent, as one of the fields for tournaments and such?
So we do rank them. We have use agreements. We have softball, we have fast pitch out there as well. That do bring not only the department revenue, but brings the city revenue, especially when they have the big state tournaments for slow pitch softball, as well as the fast pitch for girls softball. So
What's the average fee? Don't worry, you don't know. If there, somebody wants to use it for a weekend for tournaments, approximately.
normally, most weekends are full. I think roughly 40 weeks a year are basically booked, which, if you can imagine, really doesn't give us much time for maintenance. We do a lot of rentals for practices, which is a big revenue generator for us as well. We have use agreements for some of the select teams that we have in this area. So they'll come practice and they have a standing use agreement with us. If you're asking me, I think maybe it's $35 an hour-ish. Based on memory.
That's fine, it's just,
So is the revenue generated from that similar to like what the revenue was? You said the last time, wet zone, that goes back into the facility, correct?
General fund. So
Right.
typically with the associations, so that's soccer, that's hockey, that's slow pitch softball, all of them, it's percentage. So based on the percentage of teams, concessions, all of that stuff, it all varies competitively, to be honest. Adult softball is a huge pull for us, huge pull. But then you have soccer and you have those other, yes.
You mentioned that the revenue goes to the general fund, so you can't look at it like business where you say this generates money and it's worth investing in because as far as keeping it up. Because if you decked it out and they're like, now we're drawing people, they're like, we want to go around that because they got awesome fields. We'll pay a little bit extra instead of $35 an hour, 45 or 50. But it's not beneficial because the 5 years will run out of money.
If you don't mind me interject a little bit, that's kind of getting into the operations of things. We're here tonight to really look at
What the needs are.
what the needs are, yes. Just where it
I
wants
think
to.
from a citizen, in terms of like justifying doing a bond and saying, okay, we'll have it, pay it, count out. Because I think.
Let me help you with that, because to just point, but somebody is gonna ask.
Yeah.
Two things. Could we pull a revenue report and find out how much revenue is generated and tell you? Problem is specifically pointing out expenses. Because these are not enterprise funds, which would mean they operate separately, all expenses are categorized just for this, devoted just to this. Remember, you have to devote it just to that function, at least legitimately. And so if it didn't support itself, then you're laying people off or cutting programs. And so it's all general fund pot. So it's a good question. It is operational, but I think we should probably answer it. Thank you, Bill Jeff. So that it doesn't come up again, because it probably will arise again. That because your parks operations are not operated as an enterprise fund, it is a little more difficult to give you dollar for dollar expenditure versus revenue.
Isn't that the responsibility of cost accounting?
Well, we don't operate from a cost accounting basis because you have a general fund under which all of these operate. And so they would have to go in and put a code in every time or have some corresponding code every time they worked within that field. Let's say it's the wet zone. And that's cumbersome because it is not set up as a true enterprise fund. You have a general fund, which this is part of the general fund operation. The city can set it up, but if it doesn't cover its costs, are people willing to then, right? Most parks operations are not set up as enterprise funds. You will have, on occasion, a golf course would be set up as an enterprise fund. But generally, your general parks maintenance type of operations or amenitized parks functions are usually not enterprise funds.
Because we're not looking at them to recover the cost.
You're not looking at them as separate, that's right, and you're not looking at them as separate business centers.
Well, and you also have to factor in, that it's a difficult question, but how much revenue are the softball players bringing into the gas station where they fill up, or they stop at Chick-fil-A, or, you know, there are some tourism benefits, absolutely, that we get from that. So that's hard to quantify, but I did know one restaurant most definitely staffs up when they know softball is coming. So, you know, there are wait people or some people that are really happy it's there. So I do think that is a consideration.
Well, if you go out there on the weekends too, they're camped out there for the weekend. They're supplying, they're bringing in, they're spending money. So.
How about equipment? Is this to change the equipment that the city had to maintain?
Are you asking if we went to turf fields?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, we would.
These are both turf options or?
These?
Yeah.
Yes,
So do we have the equipment?
we'd have to purchase the equipment, but we're on fire now. Yes. In addition to that, irrigation, as you guys know, irrigation is really important in Texas, especially now. But it's been 100 degrees for the last 45 days. We haven't had any rain, so we have to add irrigation to common areas. All the fields aren't irrigated. Common areas would be walking up to the ball fields on either your right or left hand side. That would help us with safety, and then upgrades to existing irrigation. So whether that's adding more heads, whether that's replacing some of the heads, not only on the ball fields, but in the soccer fields as well. The soccer fields get a lot of use in their time. So concession building, restrooms, softball and baseball. That would cover structural assessment, repairs, plumbing, HVAC needs. We're continuing to have air conditioning issues at both concession areas, which does make a lot of fear that work from concession stand. So, and then playground shade is the last one. There is a playground on the north side of the park in between fields 2 and 3. That was donated 3 years ago. Just want to add shade to that as well. Just like anything else, the more shade you provide, it's safer on your assets and it doesn't give direct exposure to those playground pieces. Kayak and dock launches, again, Lakeside South Park, Sunset Park, and Columbia Park, which gives us the ability to expand our lakefront access. Again, our strategic initiative is to provide more lakefront opportunities. You're looking at roughly $75,000 to $80,000 for each kayak launch. With installation, some of them may or may not, depending on where the location is, include a John boat launch. And then $275,000 for any shoreline improvements that we have to come across. Reinforcement, drainage, earthwork, things of that sort. So you can't just throw in a kayak launch or a John boat and then expect people to walk through the grass and such. So. Sherwood Park, we talked about parking lot improvements, which is one of the options that we've talked about is asphalt. If you've been to Sherwood Park, you go in and it's like, better have a truck or a Jeep going through there, so it's pretty tough. So we want to redo that parking lot, playground updates some of the features that we have. There's enough area there that we could add probably 2 or 3 features that would enhance the usability of that playground for those neighborhoods that do surround that park. And then again, irrigation design and installation, we do have the ball field, which again, we're going to try to push for practices, but it does need irrigation. both fields that we have at Shorewood and Springfield were CIP projects. It used a lot. I don't know if it used for baseball, soccer, dog runs, whatever. But my expectation this year is to really push the use of those facilities. So. Erosion control, we talked about the major areas of concern. Obviously, Sanborn Park is a huge concern throughout the city, Lakeside Park South, and then Sanborn Park. Some examples that we had talked about are basically seawalls or gaping baskets. Keep in mind too that anything that we use or put in the lake has to be approved through the city of Dallas. So anytime we come up with a plan, it's like, hey, I got this idea, we always have to run it through DWU. So I have a contact with them, Megan Collins, who is fantastic. She is Johnny on the spot. She's there with me here. So that would be one thing that we would have to really think about as we move forward with erosion control. Trail construction. We are actually getting ready to start the Garner Football Trail, which is Garner to Bayside. So basically it runs south to Bayside on football. That's supposed to start within the next few weeks. Then what we've talked about is other trails would be Main Street East, which would be from BGBT all the way down to, actually, I'm sorry, would be from RCC down to the railroad tracks, which would extend that pathway down to, which hopefully soon will be Lakefront Grove. All of this money isn't going to cover all these trails. So kind of what we do is take that money and we look at what it's going to cost us to plan it and design it. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff. Plan it, design it, and then construct it. The leftover monies will go towards the next trail, which would be Main Street East. So we would take those leftover monies, put it into that. Whatever money was left over, we would put in a Long Branch Trail. So it's just a continual process as we try to install connectivity, safe ways, things of that sort, throughout the city. Shredded blue bond fence.
Sorry, quick question. So tell me one more time about Rainy Road. Where am I going to?
So you'll go from Chisa on Shady Road down to just about where the Lake Highlands Trail starts. So there'll be that safe way between Chisa to Lake Highlands Trail. So you'll be able to come to, I guess that'd be going east on Chisa. You'll stop, you'll hop over Shady, and then jump on Lake Highlands Trail. Makes sense. I wish I had that.
There's currently not even sidewalks on it. So
Yeah,
No,
no,
not
I
currently.
I'm just trying to figure out which, who's going to be used. What are we connecting is my question.
There is a trail on Cheetah. I don't know how extensive it is, but I know that it goes north from Strady
And
up to Penn.
It's on the trails master plan.
Yes.
along that area, you have a lot of kids trying to walk down Shady to go to the school and catch a bus that's down there, that meets down there. There's constantly kids walking down the street there.
Pearson's there, referred to as Pearson or Overland.
And even when the Miller project's there, you'll be able to go down Miller and either get on Lake Highlands Trail and go south or go north, keep straight, and it's a loop. So it's all connectivity. It's how it's, get out and walk or run or bike, so.
Awesome.
Shady Blue Bonnet Phase 2, as you guys, went out to Shady, we kind of talked about what we wanted to put in, the half-mile loop trail, the restroom facility, the playground, the safety servicing, pavilion with picnic tables and grill, and then hidden parking spaces to kind of enhance that park just a little bit.
And so what community outreach have you done in that area to find out if they want anything?
We haven't done anything yet. But we will, absolutely 100% we will. The RCC additional wing, it's kind of what we talked about last time. We did do a feasibility study in 2016 to 2017 by Ron Hobbs. This funding would add improvements in additional space for us, whether it's for senior programs, whether it's for youth programs, whether it's us moving the weight room to this area. This will give us so many options as to how we can increase our programming ability, which in turn creates additional revenue. So the approximate cost today accounting for construction is typically 6.6 to 7.9, depending on what that facility will look like. Reservations that we do a lot of internal reservations by supporting, HR, city manager's office, public works, PD, fire, all of them. So we have the opportunity to expand. But when we do that, we're turning additional revenues away. So, and then Lakefront Conroe Phase 2. Phase 2 would allow us additional features to add to the park. As you guys know, right now we're kind of in a standstill just a little bit because when we first bid this project out, it came back as double the amount of money that we had. So Jeff Bean and I are working on moving this project forward. This will give us additional parking spaces, wayfinding device, which basically the easiest way I can explain this would be like a totem pole with a light on top. So if you started at Town Point Park, you could travel the Blue Trail, which is the Texas Parks and Wildlife recognized trail, come over to Lakefront Pecan Grove, I don't know, have lunch, pick up somebody else, and kind of back. Lighting, additional lighting, trails around the park area, picnic shelters, and then possibly an observation pier, which would be just south of the kayak launch. So phase 1, what we're looking at is a kayak launch, john boat launch, kind of like a circle drive. We pull up, drop a kayak off, your canoe, whatever else you want to carry over to the lake, go park, and then go paddle around the shoreline. So this is just basically a summary of all the projects that we just talked about. Breakdown of costs, more of a single slide.
I think when we go through the evaluation process, it will help us sort through some of this. And I appreciate you going into the detail about, we had asked last time, what are the must-haves to keep functional on that versus, would be nice to have. So it gave a lot more insight here, and I like how you broke it down along the categories of how we're going to be evaluating this. So it gives a little more insight. Just would be nice to have.
Like Josh.
All right. Here's my Pardon? I closed it. No. Okay, Chief, next item on the agenda is discuss the fire department's project prioritization.
Just to give you guys a little insight, when I left here last time, I went back and we started designing or building a comprehensive scope of work. So I've got at least 3 pages on 2 stations and 4 pages on Station 3, the details. I'm not gonna dive into all the details of it now, and we can give you a 50,000-foot view of what we think we can do for what we're asking. Option one would allow us to do, we got some stuff in option two. The other thing, option one will allow us to make sure we get the foundations repaired properly. We've got water running under the building where they're not supposed to run under, so we don't really know what we're dealing with. Remodel the kitchens and the bathrooms, including the appliances, replace flooring, replace ceiling tiles where needed, improve energy efficient doors, and fix all the exterior concrete on the building. Option two would replace all the HVAC units in each station, add installation, repair plumbing, repair electrical, repair fire sprinkler alarms, security cameras, enclose the buffer gear rooms, redo the overhead doors, and as much miscellaneous stuff we can do off of our list with what we have left over. We feel like we're gonna wind up spending the $200,000 totally remodel Station 3 because it's in the worst need, because it's the oldest building, bring them up stuff. So we've got two options for you guys to look at, and we'll go with whatever option this group is doing, whatever necessary to do. But if you pick option one, everything in option two will be included in option one. Plus, like I said, I've got a detailed scope of work that we've worked on to make sure that we start. Now we're going to go back where we start itemizing pricing what these things are going to cost us. That.
So Chief, on the second option, the $500,000 for 1 and 4, I know the bunker gear was to come up to code compliance. Is that gonna cover that plus each?
Yeah, we feel like we
HVAC
can
and
get
stuff?
these things, most of these things done for them. We can get the HVAC done, add some insulation, repair some of the plumbing, and electrical sprinkler system working like they're supposed to. Insulated, everything like they're supposed to, because we've got problems with that. That's putting security cameras in, close the button.
Excuse me, refresh my memory of the year where each one of these built.
Station 3 was built in 1987. Station 1 was built in 2009. Station 4 was built in 2003.
2003.
Yes. So they're all 20 plus.
Do you happen to know, this was a question maybe for Cal or Jeff, with what's building code are we under?
We're under the
2021? Is there anything from the building codes that we've adopted that in doing any of these renovations that are gonna trigger anything beyond what we have here, do we know that yet? And if we don't, and that's kind of more of a rhetorical question.
They won't know that yet.
Okay, I'm
It's
just,
a good question, but they won't know that
yeah,
yet.
I'm just kind of throwing it out there that may be something that, you know, as we're looking at this, we might wanna just delve just a little bit deeper to figure out, because if there's some big nugget out there that could change what we're able to do with the funding, or how much, you know, is recommended. So, just so there's a,
Sure we keep that in the pot.
yeah,
Everybody can cake.
yeah.
It's,
Yeah, I'll be a question for you, maybe for you guys, but how do you categorize like what falls under repairs and stuff? So like plumbing repairs and foundation repairs, like you have a bond every time you repair something?
I think in these cases, the maintenance of the buildings was put off for so long that now we are looking at more of a capital expenditure to complete those.
How do we as a city like mitigate that?
That's a good question. Yeah, I was gonna say, it's a good question. I think Jeff answered it though, right? Unfortunately.
We have to be more vigilant on our maintenance, in our maintenance efforts. That's right.
But there's just not a budget for it, or just?
There is, but let's just say that there's been a collection of issues that have grown so much that now it's not within our budget scope.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's become a capital issue.
Well, and you consider, just my point of view, so I moved into my house in 2012. It was built in 1990, they did do some renovations, but I need a new shower. You know, so I don't think that a lot of these things are, not everything, let's say, is due to, deferred maintenance. But, you know, sometimes you do need a renovation for new bathrooms and new kitchens and stuff like that, so.
But
I
I
think
think
that
in
that's
compliance
important.
with new standards.
So I think that's important, that's just,
But you asked a question.
Chief,
Good observation.
between option one and two, you had foundation repair and option one. If we went with option two, that wouldn't take care of the foundation.
That's,
And which building is that? Is it all of them?
all three of them have some type of foundation issue.
Works.
Thank you for asking.
That's a good percent.
No, I mean, the concrete around the sidewalks and stuff is separated and dropped on all the.
So,
Do you think it's structural to the building itself?
I'm not an expert.
It's one thing I wouldn't want to get into doing with kitchens and bathrooms.
yeah.
so the difference
We know
between,
what it's
Then sidewalks, if we know it's gonna be able to build it, then you're gonna get that as foundation.
so is the difference between 5.75 and 3.5, is that the foundations?
It's mostly gonna be foundation. I don't, like I said, I've got a comprehensive list, the scope, we're trying to get pricing on all that stuff to make sure.
I think it's more than, there's a lot of foundational repair that's just factored in, but there are other things on this list that are not in the second option, such as the kitchen and bathroom remodels, energy efficiency of the doors, doors and hardware, the exterior concrete itself, not necessarily foundation, but sidewalks, exterior concrete.
Well, there's a huge difference between building foundation problem and flat work.
Yes.
So I mean, to have a foundation company come out and at least shoot your floor to find out whether or not you are moving anywhere would be a huge benefit to know whether or not we need
And
to
that's,
apply money there. 'Cause that's the first thing you need to do.
that's what we're working, to try to get folks out to start giving us better estimates.
So my understanding is option two, that's basically the full job on station three, sleep renovation. And then for station 1 and 4, the systems that need to be replaced to keep it operational until we go to bond again or whatever the next one is. And just take it in the cycle.
And we don't suspect there's serious foundation issues, but we don't know, so it's better now. We do have a lot of sidewalks that are fail, still living.
Well, but to his point, and I didn't know, but I think number one, the point is completely valid. There's a huge difference between foundation, heave, right, heave and foundation drop, right? I mean, it's just a big difference. I don't think the chief's had enough time yet, and unfortunately he was out last week, to really get into this because of the quick turnaround. Again, part of this tonight is to give this kind of to you in a sense. We can always come back as he develops more information, more specificities, and bring it back to you. But we wanted to give you more information and get to you in a way differently than we had before. Kind of, again, percolate some of these ideas and questions that will help us give you more information. So today doesn't have to be and won't obviously be the only time you see this or talk about this. So I don't want anyone to feel like you have to make any decisions tonight, because quite frankly, you won't. But you have given us information and questions to take back to bring you more information.
Like I said, we're gonna start pricing the scope of work and looking at what those things cost. Down to, hopefully down to a solid estimate we can use and go from there. We have somebody come out and see the foundations and tell us where, if we do have foundation homes or it's flat like, there may be a huge difference.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
I think there's that.
Yeah, before we finish all this up, I'd like to go back to parks projects. So, as part of this process, you know, staff's giving us input on what projects they've identified. But throughout the process, if it's on the agenda and it's related to the topic on the agenda, if you have additional projects, major capital projects that aren't identified, you know, bring that up. So I'm gonna do, the sidewalks, since that is, I believe that is parks related sidewalks. Have we thought about connecting dead end sidewalks with each other, as part of the capital project?
So unfortunate.
Is that
You
part?
mean, it's not, unfortunately.
Okay, well then I'll save that for another
Okay.
time. Community parks, sport field lights, have you thought about retrofitting those, with wireless connected LEDs? That way you don't have to go to the site itself when you turn off, turn on, it does timing. Have you thought about that?
Can you clarify?
Sport field lights, community park, they're running the old 90s model incandescents. Have you thought about retrofitting those? Newer ones?
We've talked about it, yes. It's so pricey. Definitely an option. Yeah.
Do you want us to add that to the list? for
I'd
consideration?
like to
Yeah.
take
Well,
those into consideration.
They may be pricey, but there's also a huge difference energy savings wise. That, you know, may very well be worth our while. So that's nice.
So part of this is, it's not often I'm gonna try to help the Mason. We don't really need to kind of get feedback here from our standpoint. What we want to do is receive this. So we're gonna add this to the list. We're gonna go out and get information, get best estimates as best we can, and we'll bring it back to you in another iteration. So if there are other suggestions for Parks Capital projects, this is the time in which we will receive it. You may also have some suggestions for the fire department. Lord knows, we don't give them enough money.
Keep that in mind.
Amen, right? And to Mayor's point, I think we've been remiss, unintentionally, of giving you an opportunity to add capital projects that you may be envisioning or thinking about. So I'd like to ask the chair to add it to the next agenda item, or the next meeting as an agenda item. But for today, because we're limited in scope, we can only allow you to add for these two topics. So we're going to just kind of receive your inputs if you have any, such as this suggestion on upgrading the lights at Capitol, at the community park.
Can I clarify? Yeah. Mayor, you're talking about all of the field lighting out there?
All sports field lights.
Okay.
Yeah,
All, not just softball or baseball?
right, all of it, yeah.
I have a question about, the erosion control. Is everything at, not sure what,
East side,
it's the one down by the river, Springfield. Is all of that erosion taken care of?
So as of right today, no. We are gonna put shotcrete in there, which we'll be taking to council hopefully within the this month. That they'll go in and they'll fix all of that erosion, at Springfield Park. So,
That's
It's gonna be
sure
in conjunction with Public Works.
yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure, because I was trying to think about which erosion I'm most concerned about in that one.
I'm glad the mayor brought up the point two of adding things. Okay. Because we still have, and this is for the public, we still have the website as well. So if any member of the public wants to submit something to be brought to consideration, they can do that. And we can do that too for that matter. I mean, you know, if something comes up, and I know me, if I don't put it on my phone to write it down, it's on in 2 minutes. So it's a good way to get projects on for consideration.
I almost hesitated to bring this up, the actual erosion At our last meeting, we talked about erosion, and I had the impression that that's such a sticky wicket that maybe we needed a lot more information and a lot more, say, backwards dealing with erosion because it involves so many different entities. Has that changed, or is that information improved in any way since our last meeting?
If I speak, I think at last meeting, what the city manager was trying to message is that citywide, that is a big undertaking. But what's on tonight's list, for the parks is targeted these specific parks.
Well, yeah, but Jeff, these specific erosion control spots are still on the same lake. that
Yes, but
Dallas owned, not Dallas owns, but Dallas had control over.
they own it.
Okay. And the Army Corps of Engineers has a say in it as well.
Right.
So has there been any communication with them to say, hey, we want to partner with you to help you recover your lake?
We could even fund, I mean, maybe is there a possibility to fund a study into the erosion that we've seen in terms of identifying the worst areas first and going from there? I mean, is there anything?
Thank you, yes. I think that would be an excellent way to add to the list of CIP projects that are considered for the bond package. It's just, these parks are identified as a potential project. I don't think there is an issue with Dallas or the Corps. If these are projects, those entities will be coordinated with. We can't do anything without their input and approval. But in a larger citywide perspective, yes, a larger study would be a good thing.
Well, and I think even study, I mean, before I say aye to $3 million, because say yes to $3 million for erosion control, these three spots, I would need to know, real, who says that that's really what's happening? How bad is it? You know, what are the right ways to deal with it? How much does that cost? I mean, that's a project. I mean, that's a project you can come and ask us, or at least ask me for money, and I can say yea or nay. Okay, $3 million just for what we walked that one day, you know, $1 million apiece, especially when one is so much smaller than the other, kind of makes me think that we're not really putting our heads to not really thinking this through or whatnot. This is just throw $1 million out and see if it sticks. You know, that's not.
I don't think you're all the way wrong. I think part of the challenge for us, again, I'm a late entrant into this discussion, is it's expensive to hire someone to do that analysis. Six-figure expensive. And I think the city's position on this is still fluid. By crashing against the timing of trying to get a project on here.
I understand, but I think that may actually save us more money in the long run. Or, you know, cost us more because they identify a bigger problem.
No, I think the point is well taken there.
Hence the desire for a study for the entirety of the erosion before we go and throw money at the wall and determine whether certain areas are a responsibility to repair or not repair.
Should this morph into that? Should this item, number 10, perhaps morph into, because it's not going to be inexpensive and it's going to be terribly expensive from an M&O standpoint. Should this then morph into a larger city erosion control study?
I really honestly think that it should.
Agree.
I mean, there are areas that do, in public parks that do need some attention, no question about that. So is the entirety of 3 million, something that is needed? I don't know. I think a certain portion should be allocated for erosion control for parks that do have erosion. But the larger question of erosion in general in the city, even those that are not directly owned by the city, at least they're leased by the city, but
Well,
there's two things that.
we can look at it this way too. I mean, Scenic Point is on here to be fixed. If we had a full erosion control study of every place that the city basically has to take back on that property, that maybe would have been something we had said, well, you gotta do this before you put this public. I agree. I think figure out how big is big and how bad is bad.
Now, understand, that delays potential repair.
I was just
That
mentioning.
was gonna be my point. Does that mean that we're just gonna close Scenic Point Park for
Well, Scenic Point Park is an entirely different beast. And I was gonna circle back on that one in a minute. But your point, well taken, I don't think that we just say no to addressing erosion control in city parks. But we could technically morph this also into a much larger kind of discussion of looking at a citywide analysis of erosion, plus putting money to fixing erosion in city parks. Is that $3 million? I don't know. Could it be 1.5? Maybe, who knows? But, you know.
Yeah, and I think really, if we think that we need to ask for 3 million to do a study,
No.
no, I'm saying a study and then address in order of priority, okay, erosion control. And
Just like
that
we
would
do
allow
with
us to
roads.
come back later and ask for more money if necessary to continue that.
That's not bad.
But at least then we have a plan and we're walking down that road in a more informed and possibly better
Could we
avenue.
morph this into what we think it would cost to do a full erosion control engineering study?
Well, I mean, I think your point's well taken, $3 million, and then just say this is gonna fund the study and capital projects. There you go, leave it and walk away,
Looks like a car.
right? I mean,
Because at least then
you know,
people, the public would say, okay, we're doing our due diligence.
yes, you're right.
And attacking the problem in a more,
That would
That's
be
why-
the way.
That's why I said I hesitated to bring it up because it's so complex. The other facet that I understood from our last discussion was that there may be other sources of income to help with this erosion question, and not just fall to the city.
It wouldn't necessarily be that way, it would be.
Council of governments, could be state.
Oh, okay, I know what you're saying.
yeah, because I mean, it's a reservoir, it's part of the water district, I mean,
Sure.
and as much dirt as you put in there, it means that much less water. So there's,
They have an incentive.
there's a vested interest in it.
I would even say go to Texas Parks and Wildlife or designated pattern trail there.
I think those are all, I don't think we've studied those like we can, right? I think those are points that we have to take in, maybe additional revenue sources.
Or at least partners.
Yeah, no, absolutely,
But-
there's no question.
But the point, I like your point of allocating 3 million, that includes a analysis of erosion in, all outlying areas of the city that abut the lake. And then go from there, right? The study will inform the spin.
Up to, that's somewhere else.
Right.
How big do we want to go though with that study? Because if we say city, that includes all the way up to Lake Creek, that includes all the way up to the east fork.
Within the state areas.
Well, I think that could be decided operationally, what, basically the lakeside erosion. I mean, Muddy Creek is no longer a lake.
Yeah, I would say within the take area of Ray Hubbard, is within the city limits probably.
It's an interesting point, I think we should discuss it.
Yeah. It's just,
So move things along a little bit. Keep all these discussion points in mind when we go through the other information that is included in tonight's packet. This was the methodology and the form to begin ranking what has been presented to us already. So I don't know if you've had a chance to read through the criteria or how it works. And if you have, or if there's any questions.
Well, I would like to hear the rest of what you were going to say, but I would like to conduct a community exercise, if you're willing, to go through one example of one of these projects and just sort of take you through the whole.
We've been.
Before we, I wasn't, sorry, wasn't finished talking. So before we move into that, 'cause that's totally different. City Point Park. That doesn't work. $122,000 to fund a study to find out how much money it's gonna cost, and then wait another 3 years to ask for, yeah, that doesn't work. We need to try and figure out, in my opinion, we need to figure out a rough estimate of cost of repair. We could also in that fund the study, but not putting anything toward repairs, that just means City Point Park's gonna stay closed for who knows how much longer. So that we need to come back to that.
Could that not be rolled into the erosion control allotment and that take priority?
It's not just erosion control though, you're talking about structural issues.
That's what I thought it was Ramsey supposedly.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah, you want to allocate more to that.
Well, it's a project on its own, right?
Yeah.
So you want to allocate more?
Well, I want to allocate what it takes to fix the issues.
Well, we won't know that yet, and that's
But
part of the challenge.
we need to really try to get some kind of number, because no number doesn't work.
Well, remember, we came up with an estimate before, and council was unhappy, and the group was unhappy because it was a out-of-the-air estimate. And unfortunately, due to timing and $122,000 cost constraint, the best we can give you, which we're happy to give you, is an estimate based on, some type of related analysis. And I'm happy to do that because we've given it before,
So,
but it was kind of rejected before. You had an amount there before, did you not?
I'm sorry.
Your first presentation, you had an amount there before. And part of it was the methodology of how he arrived at that amount that was challenged, understandably. But that, for now, because of the time constraint of this, is the best we can give you. Or, even when we spend this $122,000, they're not going to finish in time to give you usable data.
Which is exactly what the mayor is saying. So if we go ahead and approve 122,000 for the study, plus add 810 or 12,000 to that.
Well, I wish it was that much.
I'm with you. I'm simply saying we gave a number
to
before.
start.
We gave you a number before. Happy to give you a number again. All I'm saying is that number, how it was derived, the methodology was critiqued. Not saying it's not justified, but at the moment, that's the best we can give you under the constraint.
But this board didn't understand that it was going to cost $122,000 for somebody to go
And
out
again,
there and-
happy to give you a number. Happy to give you a number. That's not an issue.
So this forensic analysis, what does this entail?
So, in addition to some of the structural problems, we want to look at if you recall, you may know the history of the project, you may not, but basically, it was some timber support that had to get changed out because Dallas did not want treated wood in the lake. And so a different wood was used that was untreated, that was supposed to withstand a marine environment. That wood seems to have not withstood that marine environment, and we thought it would be a good idea to understand why. Is that wood the wood that was spec'd, or did the contractor do a shortcut?
So that's $122,000.
there's some testing.
Are they hiring? Because I want to apply for that. I mean, that,
DNA sample.
it,
So, in addition to this, my question is, so we're talking about funding this in a 2024 bond election. So that means we're not even going to start a study until maybe summer of 2024. And my additional question, just on a timing question, is all of these wet zone water park that we're asking for funding, does that mean we're not going to do work to open up the 2024 season?
I'm assuming we're gonna open.
We will.
In terms of the capital improvements, they would have to be timed. Obviously, have to get the funding and then in a way that hopefully minimizes impact to operation, but they might. I mean, I don't have an answer, I don't know if we have an answer yet, but you know, the nature of the capital projects is they're multi-year, they're phased at times. All of these things wouldn't happen until earliest when the summer, when the money, the bonds were sold and the money was received.
And that's usually August?
Yes. When we, yeah, we just sold some in July, so July.
Is it July?
July.
Okay.
July, August.
can do it through the winter.
But it's 24, I mean, to your point.
It's 24, it's
Yeah,
not,
but
it's to be open in 2025.
potentially, I mean,
But the same point, our question, no, you're right, I mean, funding a study, that's just a study. The park's gonna be closed for, at least another year, right?
School closed.
But the point that I'm making is, and I understand your point, is that keeping it closed for another 3-4 years, I mean, no, that's just not an option. So how do we put money toward it on top of funding this, expensive study? Is the question. We didn't know at the time, this board didn't know at the time, that it was gonna cost $122,000 for somebody to go out there and look. Now that we know that, well, that changes things. So I would, I don't know what the number presented was, previously.
We still have 5%.
Yes, we're seeing that.
They amended it to 122,000.
Outside of full.
The front page where it has the total is the original.
That is what originally.
Originally, but now they amended that to not to be only 122,000.
Part of that, I think, was the direction we did what has to be done. It's on. So we definitely can't do 6.8 million ton mark.
So, okay. All right,
So,
that made my point.
can I ask a question about that, kind of to follow up with what you're saying? I guess my question is, we know that there's a problem, right? We know that the pilings are eroding or they're disintegrating, right? So, I mean, we already know that, so they've gotta be replaced with something, whether they be additional, replaced with similar pilings that meet the city of Dallas requirements, or concrete pilings, whatever the case is. I mean, wouldn't the money that is being asked for here be better allocated towards redesign rather than investigatory? I mean, we already know we got a problem. Why are we paying somebody $122,000? Tell us we have a problem.
I asked the
Let's
same
just
question.
get a design, I mean, and maybe I'm oversimplifying. I don't mean to,
I don't
but,
think you are.
but yeah, that's kind of, well, exactly. And, and then the other part of that is I'm hearing that potentially the contractor may or may not have done it correctly.
Look, I think that's a can of worms we don't want to open here.
Right.
Admittedly.
Okay, that's what
And I think it's,
Well, it should be a can of worms,
yeah, I think it is. If you get testing and you have, a basis for that, it's a possibility, but, before we get to a place where somebody is, we don't know that. We don't know what the cause is, right? So I think the point that you've made about, is this money better spent? Redesigning is the same question I asked Aaron when we first received this. Is, gosh, could we just redesign it for this money? Maybe we could, maybe we should. And especially when you think about the money for potential reconstruction. Because there's some other issues even outside of the pilings.
What's the original cost of constructing this?
I don't know, does anybody know?
We saw the contract, but I don't recall. We can-
Yes,
We have the contract, we have the resolution.
go ahead.
And do we need to know what the cost of, could we just knock out a bridge and have a trail on the lake?
Oh, no, it wouldn't work. It's all, it's, very much floodplain, if not just always flooded down there. It literally, and it also shoots out over the lake.
Yeah, honestly, I don't remember what it's like. So, okay,
Would the original cost impact the responsibility of this demo, saying it's not worth for maintaining and stuff? If they spent $5 million on it, now it's gonna cost another $5 million, especially if it's like a $10 million trail, that will then continue to have issues possibly because of some other issue. So, I don't know.
Well, that's the thing, of whatever, if we do replace any of the pilings, it certainly isn't gonna be what we were constructed, that's for sure. Now, if it's steel or concrete, then you're talking about a much longer lifespan rather than wood. Whoever thought wood was smart, but in water.
Some words are
Is,
Common sense should have kicked in at that point.
suckers.
so,
There are some that.
I said there are some species that survive in water environments.
so,
but historically, it wasn't on that one.
so I don't want to get too far in the weeds on this, but we're in the trees. So if we fix what's already there, under the current design, we would not need approval from that.
No, we would still need the approval for that.
Okay.
Because
Could they say that we, no? we
No,
don't.
I don't think that they would, from what I know of Dallas and Megan. I don't think they would object, I just think they would, be very cautious about the material.
So if we were to,
And, excuse me, and if we were to provide some erosion, control, road protection for this, they would be thrilled.
and then the other part of that though is, if we decide that we're gonna basically go with a whole new design, go steel or concrete,
Whatever.
does that, are they basically saying we gotta go through the whole new, start the approval process over instead of just saying, hey, we're fixing it, this is what we're gonna fix?
From what I know of the degradation, I don't think it's a fix as much as a reconstruction. Right about that?
That's correct.
Okay.
Did Dallas recommend this use wood rather than another
I'm
material?
sorry,
Was it the Dallas recommended the use of wood versus?
honestly, I don't know who did. That's not in the record.
Because if they say, let's use wood again,
So,
you show them the pictures.
I think they would be agreeable to an alternate material such as concrete or steel.
So this kind of goes into, if we're going to use a different material into the reconstruction project. So it's not as much of bringing it up to par rather than it is hiring a design engineering firm to redesign the actual trail system and reconstructing it with an alternative material. I think that is the answer. Obviously, staying with wood is just not smart. But the question is, if we're going to continue to have this trail system, that it is reconstructed, basically redesigned, and uses more permanent materials that will last a lot longer. Or the alternative is to tear it down, which still costs money.
Well, and that was kind of my clarification. This is getting torn down regardless.
Right.
I mean, it's gonna tear down and be rebuilt, or we're gonna tear it down?
It's partially gonna be torn down.
Because is there anything that's currently there that
So-
can be reused?
My understanding is this was only for the replacement of the pylons and any, right, impacted structural members. So I was talking with the mayor a little bit offline, and I think it's a point for us, staff, wanting to support this. So here's the question, do you want to spend $5 million to reconstruct partially? Or do you give us a budget of $5 million and tell us to go build you a new one, however much that money gets us?
I think it would be a good basis for beginning negotiation with another source of revenue, saying that we have $5 million that's available there, or keep it to yourself and say, we have up to $3 or $4 million, can you kick in too? The city of Dallas,
I would,
or somebody else. I don't know whether.
I don't, not on this now erosion control, I think Dallas and others would, but on this,
I mean, from what I understand, negotiations have not begun with the city of Dallas with regard to erosion, and so it's the same thing occurred with City Park.
I don't know that we've spoken to anyone about City Park. I don't know that Dallas would care if we had an outlook, overlook at all. I think we have a better argument with erosion control with them.
Well, you know, from that part.
Doesn't mean there might not be grants or other things out there. Certainly, we would look and see if there's some parks and wildlife grants or other regional sources, maybe from the COG, et cetera. But I think those are much less certain revenue sources. So they're possible and they can supplement. But I don't know, I mean, it's entirely up to you how much you want to give us. I just don't know that we would succeed in a negotiation with the city of Dallas about a park amenity for us, because I don't think they care.
Yeah, when they departed Elgin Robertson, I think that was Dallas' statement on what they think about it.
Dallas won't, they're just simply, they may be interested in erosion control, but not park.
I have a request. This is on item 13 in the Parks and Rec, Raleigh Community Center additional rate. Now, the amount is $7 million, and so that's going to be a fair amount of money. But I'm a big user of the community center. Usually up there 5 days out of the week. And I do recognize that there are capacity problems there. By problems, I mean that beginning at 6 in the morning until approximately 9, capacity. From 4 o'clock until it closes, it's at capacity. There are classes, it's individual use of various rooms or organizations that use it on the weekends. Saturday is unbelievable. I mean, every room is occupied and kids are running everywhere. Sunday is much the same, except the people are a little different. There are birthday parties, weddings, etc. But capacity is it's not there to accommodate them all. So all I would like to do is get some additional information, data basically, to support saying yes to the additional wing. Because it was in 2018, I believe, the same CIP asked for an additional wing. And it was about a little over $2 million, if I remember correctly, this time. And it's more than doubled in that span of time. So I think in terms of inflation, in terms of capacity, and in terms of service to citizens, whatever data we have that's available in order to support doing this, I think it's a really good idea.
Usage data and cost data.
Correct. Fair enough. Because, I mean, it's a valuable, I mean, it's one of the treasures of the city. Sort of like the Wet Zone and Kids Kingdom, but it remains that capacity is, it's at capacity. And if we look forward to other discussions here that we've had here with regard to the growth of the city, we need to grow with the for like.
We can bring you that data at the next meeting.
Well, I mean, I'm looking for a basis for being able to support this.
Understood.
I want to second that, 'cause my point was like, we have a park that's never been used, we have millions of whether it's gonna be used in the future, fix it. And I'd much rather see this $5 million spent on top of the $7 million, because the center is awesome, and it's been, so there's a lot of evidence to show that.
Okay.
Okay, so going back to check. If we go back to the ranking criteria that were in the packet, and this is pretty standard from the way we've done it before. For each of these, and I'm glad that we had the explanations tonight, they were like, okay, how does Springfield Park, or at least Springfield Park, impact transportation and circulation? You told us. So we'll do a sample, if you want to lead it.
I would love to like.
Okay, let's just pick whichever one you want off from there,
I was
and
thinking number 8.
we'll go through the criteria as an example. Now, we're not saying that you're gonna rank it the way
Right.
that we're doing it tonight, but
An example,
Just
just
an example.
run through. So number 8 is the kayak and dock launches at 3 possible parks. The price tag on it is $500,000. And looking at the ranking criteria, one of the first items. Now, what you would do is you would rank from 1 to 10 in the space underneath the column labeled transportation and circulation, across from the number 8 kayak dock launches. We would put a number in that box, and when all the numbers are put in, we will total them, and then we will take all of the responses and compute an average. So each member does this on their own, independently, and assesses the merits of that project in accordance with this ranking criteria, right? First one being transportation and circulation, and there is a small description about balancing between access and mobility. And then there are some questions that help zero in on how this project might impact transportation and circulation in terms of incorporating access management, improving the transportation system. Is it part of our master plan? Does it improve traffic safety? Does the project improve the level of service, et cetera? A kayak launch, my take on it would be a kayak launch does not really impact or improve traffic safety. If anything, it might adversely impact it by causing, if there is a new usage somewhere, it might actually adversely impact it. There are no negative grades for these, but certainly a 0 or a 1 might be appropriate for transportation. Now, somebody might
And
have a
just giving
different
it-
take on this.
just giving a difference of opinion, not saying I feel this way.
Is kayaking not transportation?
Well, so what we're looking at is not necessarily the kayaks, but the launches. And my retort would be on A, as it says, does the project incorporate access management? There is currently no access to the public of the lake from that location. So I think it greatly improves access. So I'm not saying it makes it a 10, but it's not a 0 or 1.
But it also does move towards realize 2020, so,
Yeah,
which is blue.
So you would suggest that on B, for example, it would be, it would not improve public transportation. I'm trying to just.
Well, if we look at it from mass transit, I mean, I don't think we can say that.
So that would be, okay.
But those are just kind of, when we look at each one, we're, you know, you might say, as you said, transportation, circulation, what does access to the lake have any impact on? Well, based on the criteria, there is some impact. But when we go through each of these, you know, kind of look at the criteria, because I just know it makes me think about things different. You know, when we get to the public safety things for fire, well, of course, it's a 10 on improves public safety, but there's other areas where those improvements have value too, or don't have value.
And that's kind of the purpose and key of this. Is, everybody's got a little different perspective, and those questions are there to help you understand, think about how the project may or may not impact the category. Public safety, I certainly would think that there is a benefit, a public safety benefit, because it improves access to the lake where somebody may be tempted to launch a kayak or a john boat where there is no launch, which is a little unsafe. So I think there is a public safety aspect to something like this. Number 3, existing infrastructure. Does the project provide additional capacity or upgrading the existing system? I think it does. Is the facility exceeding its useful life? There is no existing facility. We are talking about a new structure, but in terms of the systems, I do think that it adds capacity. I would give it some measure of benefit, somewhere in the middle probably. Moving on, revitalization and balanced growth. Attracting developers, businesses, corporations to call Rowlett home, and providing needed infrastructure to continue that attraction. Reconstructing, some of these criteria do give examples as to how to look at things. They say storm drain line through a neighborhood would score low in the growth and economic development category because it's really infrastructure. Does a kayak launch have potential to promote growth and revitalization in priority areas? I think there is some truth in that. So again, it's all about looking at the project, looking at these descriptions, and evaluating whether the project fits or doesn't fit into that category. Quality of life, I don't think there's much to say about that. I think that's scored high on my list. Regulatory compliance. The examples given there are probably not appropriate, but there probably are some regulatory compliance issues surrounding the construction of a launch, including, as somebody mentioned earlier tonight, the Corps has a jurisdiction over the lake, and so there would be some regulatory compliance required. So this
Accessibility as well.
External funding. Looking at this from a potential, I think it does score low. I don't think there would be a lot of outside agencies that would be willing to partner with us to do this.
Well, to back up just on regulatory compliance, yeah, if we're gonna put in the launch, we probably have a few regulations that we need to do that. However, the project itself, there is no regulatory requirement that we have for kayak launches, for john boat launches, like very often. So, you know, it's really, you know, I would think it's very low.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But be thoughtful in these, because if we go back to public safety, you can say, well, it really doesn't have a public safety impact. But considering there's very few access points to the lake for fire right now. I mean, I actually don't know, where would you access that?
The,
Ship Road, I guess?
there's two, Paddle Point Park's one of our main we can launch there. At Paddle Point with our system that we have, we can launch off of 66 out there if we need to. So it gets us to kind of two different areas of the lake if we need to be there. But that would be our main launch point. Did I
No,
answer,
no, it's all,
that get your question
It's
answered?
all good.
That,
Yeah, we were just kind of using it as an example.
I think the chief you brought up a good point. I've never considered the water rescue. You know, when you say kayak and stuff like that, I think, right, you got a nice slim boat. You're giving us thought as to launching a major vessel, correct? Actually, ours is what's called an MR boat. It's got kind of floatable pontoons on it with a motor. So we actually we back real close to the water when we get it in the water pretty quickly if we need to. For rescue, yeah. It can be carried by 2 or 3 guys.
Still should have held it
Yeah.
up. But that, yeah, and I mean, that kind of storm, I would put under public safety. It's just.
it's all, degrees and your own personal take on how the project fits into the particular category. There's no wrong answer, there's no right answer. It's all about grading it and coming up with the rankings. Operational budget, number 8, is really about what's it gonna cost to operate this project. Is there an impact to the operational budget or not? There's certainly an impact to maintenance. Launches need to be maintained. There probably would not be any personnel impact. Trash pickup, okay?
Landscaping.
Oh, landscaping for what? For what?
It's a what?
For what?
For the area. Grass, yes. It's on 18, landscaping.
Less landscaping.
Number 9 has to do with how timely is the project and also the location of the project. Is it appropriate? Is the timing appropriate? Is the location appropriate? And then, of course, number 10, the special considerations. Are there, it's really, see, that category seems to be about the political will of the project, support for the project. How well does the project meet that? Does anybody have any questions about this?
Is this the same ranking we used last time?
It is very, very similar, yes.
Is there any reason we, item 4, 1, 5, and 10 versus 7, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10? This is kind of different scaling.
I'm sorry. I missed those numbers. Where?
Item 4. And item 7.
7 has a 0. I think that's probably the only.
Well, but it doesn't really give you a choice of 1 or 3. It's 2, 4.
Well, I don't, there is no, there's nothing that says you can't score it as a 1 or a 3. It's just a gradation there, as a scale.
4, they just forgot to put the arrow in there. So,
But it's the only one that has a 0, probably, because it's the only one that it either is those 1 or 0, it's on.
Will staff go through this?
Yeah, I think Mike,
We can put any number that you wanted there.
I remember that being confusing last time.
Yeah.
Some put 1.5.
I'm sorry, Mike.
It missed all over the place.
That's not too bad.
Whole numbers of.
Can we make an agreement?
Yeah. No, we got all kinds of.
I thought I heard a question about staff.
Will they work through this process?
I'm not sure I
That project? I mean, because are we gonna know all the answers to?
I don't do it, but I can repeat myself. So the point is that these forms are for you to fill out on independently of your colleagues here on the committee, to rank or to rate each of those projects according to these criteria. You'll fill out the numbers under each column, how you think that project applies to that criteria. And then when you're finished, you'll turn these into staff. Yes, everyone will turn one of these forms into staff. And we will go through and sum all the scores as a single sum, a single one, it's basically 1 to 100. And then we will compute an average for that particular project.
Yeah, I get the math on that. I'm
Okay.
asking like on item 6, regulatory. Realistically, do we have enough information?
Well,
Maybe.
if you,
Best
I think that we have provided you with enough information, but if you have a question about it, please feel free to ask.
Does it benefit us at all to have kind of the blind test and input from staff to do the same thing that we're doing? And then at the end, we all kind of come together and look and say, okay, you know, let's have that conversation, you know, so staff rank this one higher. You know, we all may have it be lower as an average, but what's driving that? What's the driver? You know, make the case, tell us what we're missing. And likewise for us to say, okay, you know, we don't think that, you know, we think this is a higher priority than maybe staff may, and this is why, and then come together that way. I think that would be a good exercise.
I think this is, it's the more important thing is during presentation, staff should be addressing these items in their presentation. So I mean, if this, just like the bunker here, if this is a mandatory OSHA requirement or whatnot, then that needs to be in the presentation so we understand that this is, you know, this has some priority to it and there's some teeth behind it. And so when we go through the listing, we'll, oh yeah, that's right, this is, you know, right. But if they don't, then it's your knowledge.
Well, that's why I just was making the suggestion that it might be beneficial to us as the task force to, you know, to have that feedback, you know, on their end in case there's something that we are missing from a regulatory standpoint or from, you know, any of those other criterion points, that's all.
I also have some question.
I think that's where the city manager needs to go ahead and do the same thing on his side. And then whenever we present him with that, he go, well, gosh, I really fell out over here or whatnot.
Not that I want more work for staff, but I just thought that it just seemed like a good idea.
In terms of the fire station, let me speak a little bit to that. We have presented, I think, that many of the problems that those stations do stem from out of code compliance. But as we explained tonight, you know, we have, but at tonight, what those deficiencies are exactly, I think we won't know until we get further into those projects. Is that what you said before?
No, at the risk of oversimplifying this, I think they've made the points. Chief, for example, the bunker gear needs to be separated. I don't know that it's feasible that Aaron can point out every component of every single project, but I think we've got to balance this, and I think this is about degrees. This is a mix. And so some of this, if you don't feel comfortable that you can properly answer a particular section, then shoot us an email, give us a call. We will advise you to the degree that we can on a particular section and potential impacts so that you can form your opinion. But I think we're going to stall in minutia and not get to decision points. And so I hope we certainly tried to give you enough information that you could take these and at least in a fair way, go about your business of now ranking. Because really, one of the more important things you're going to do for us that we really aren't going to do for you, we've given you orders in terms of listing, but what's most important is when you go out and come back in terms of your opinions on these particular areas. And to reiterate what Jeff has said, this is gradient. These are gradients, right? There isn't a wrong answer. I mean, you could argue there's a wrong answer. What you know about regulatory compliance? It's one category. You're going to get a whole list. We're going to compile all of this. We're going to show it to you, and then you're going to see the averages. But even still, you may say, as a collective, that you don't think the numbers reflect what needs to happen. So you'll get another bite at this apple. But we could, come back again and again and again where you don't feel like you have enough information, because obviously you're making a very important decision. But why don't we take a stab at this? And if you find you're out looking at something, you shoot us an email, and we can answer it or give us a call.
So one thing that we can't, that you have brought up, getting bogged down in the minutia, if we make a first pass at this as individuals, compile the data, there may be something that we had said, oh, is there some piece on there that I don't understand? Well, it may turn out that everybody feels that that's not a high-ranking project anyway, so we're going to drop it. So if that's the case, we don't get bogged down in those details. But if there's something that we think was important, or the staff says, well, if we don't include this, X could happen or Y could happen, they can present that once we get our first numbers through that. But we have to start cutting this down some, because we haven't even looked at roads and infrastructure yet.
Because part of this is, how much weight are you going to give us saying this has to happen? Guess what? All of this has to happen, in our opinion, to varying degrees or another. And then we don't need you if we're going to rank. And I don't mean that in any sarcastic way. I mean, that's kind of the value that you bring from the community perspective of what's important to the city. We can tell you operationally everything is important. You heard Aaron talk about the fact that, while the kid zone is open, right, it's how usable is it when some of these things, but does it stop it from opening? Not necessarily. They're still fighting fires. We're going to operate. This is about how well we operate, how amenitized we are as a city, how good your roads are, where they are. We're going to do the exact same thing on the roads again. And so I would, to echo the point, take a stab at it. Some of you have done this exercise before. Ask us questions if you're out and about, but if we get stuck in this cycle of, presentation, you won't make any progress, and we'll be up against a deadline, and you won't have enough time to study this.
I don't know that anybody, does anybody here feel like we don't have enough information to do this? I mean, I feel like.
Okay, because I've heard, well, I don't know if we have enough information, but if you do, then great, our work here is done.
I don't know, I mean, well, not the roads, but I mean.
Yeah, we're just talking about this piece
Yeah,
right now.
yeah, just this.
Yeah.
I feel like.
We're doing this in chunks. We're gonna come back, and we're gonna give you a presentation on the road, and then you'll do this whole cycle.
I mean, I feel like, especially with the presentation tonight and the additional package, which thank you all for getting that put together. I mean, I feel like I do, I don't know if
Okay,
anybody
then,
else
yeah,
does, so. I mean, if we don't, then, if we don't as a group, then we need to throw the flag down and say, hey, we don't have enough information. But if we feel like we do, let's move forward and get the thing ranked.
I don't think it's necessarily a question of information, although some of us may have questions about individual projects.
Right.
What we did before, Eric, recall, in 18, we took Saturday and we came in and we went over the projects. It would be folks that would be advocates and some who would say, no, I don't think this deserves the money that's required in order to build a project. So there's that kind of thing that I expect to have happen here would be a discussion among ourselves, not necessarily waiting for information to come from the presentations. But the idea that each and every one of us has some experience and we've got some particular skills that we have, we can share with one another and either advocating for a particular project or not.
And Jeff, I think we did that after we did the first pass though. So I think we did a first pass and then we all came in and some of us were like, oh, I didn't think that was gonna score so low, or that vice versa. And could talk about it and then it would sway some opinions, but I think we need to.
Well, that's why I
Get
mentioned, to
first
be
numbers.
clear on the process, we're gonna compile this, and if I didn't say clear enough, let me restate it. And we're gonna bring this back to you, that's why I said, you may see, oh gosh, this really doesn't warrant the ranking that I gave it, and then you'll have that opportunity here in this meeting.
Correct.
To finalize the order, if you will. So, that will happen.
So Jeff, what's your request or ask on the turnaround time? I'm guessing that you want us to do it
Question, thank you.
quickly so that you have
Yes.
time to disseminate the information to get it ready for the next meeting, right?
For the next meeting, yes, I would like, actually, no, I was thinking if you could have it by the next meeting.
I was gonna say, the next meeting is the 25th. So if we, since this is an individual exercise, could get our results, our first pass, we're gonna be doing this multiple times. The staff by like the 11th. Could, if everybody's okay with that.
Yeah, I just have one quick question. Is it possible instead of sending this in PDF?
Yes.
Send it in an Excel spreadsheet. This way we can send it back to you guys in an Excel spreadsheet.
Yes, yes.
Sit here and-
Yes, absolutely, yes. My mistake, I, fuck, yes,
That'll make it easier for you when we compile it too.
yes.
Yeah, could we do that? Do we think we could all do that? Get it back to Bina by 11? Please remember, if we're sending it in digitally, do not do a reply all, to just send it directly to her. Is that okay? Would that give you enough time? Would that give staff enough time? That way we can see it goes first results and our digging into it. Everybody okay with that? Okay. All right. So that's kind of, if we can get our first pass, granted, there's probably gonna be at least one more, probably two more discussions just on these first two, when we start discussing the data and sitting down and meeting with it. But yeah, let's try to get it to Bina by the 11th, and then staff can give us first results. Because what I'm concerned about is, I know Parks has a lot of urgent needs. I mean, I think public safety is a little more dry for me. But we really gotta figure out, we can't go to the voters with a $36 million parks bond. It's just not happening. So we need to say, what do we have to have, what do we need to do to keep moving forward or maintain what we have? And that's why I'd rather get our list a little shorter if we can as quickly as possible.
I don't know if it was stated previously, maybe it was, but due to new appraisal values, the bonding capacity, the bonding capacity that we'll have to work with for May of 2024 is at least $63 million. So that did go up from the.
You should have told us that.
We don't have streets in front of us yet. We know that was at least 250 million by itself.
So what goes up will come down.
Yes, it will.
Okay. Any other topics related to this tonight? Anybody have anything they'd like on the next agenda? Give it to me now. If not, you do, just send it to, or we'll get them on the agenda. Yeah,
We're gonna do the streets.
Yes, yes.
all right. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you, everybody. 7 years.